The Council expected one human ambassador. Instead, the sensors found something 4.8 kilometers long coming toward Station Meridian. For 12 minutes, Sensor Officer Pell kept recalibrating the array, because no diplomatic vessel was supposed to read like a small moon. The first number had come back wrong. Pell was sure of it. He had been on long-range duty for 6 hours, watching empty approach lanes, logging freight traffic, and waiting for the human diplomatic vessel that was supposed to arrive 2 days before the Council deadline. The assignment should have been routine. A representative from Earth had been summoned. A diplomatic ship would arrive. It would transmit registry, request docking, and become the Council's problem. Then the sweep returned a mass displacement equivalent to a Class 4 gravitational body. Pell ran the scan again. The same number appeared. He checked the array status, found no fault, recalibrated every sensor manually, and ran it a third time. The same number appeared again. Only then did he call his supervisor. By the time the chief engineer came down and confirmed the backup array showed the same result, nobody in the sensor bay was speaking casually anymore. The approaching vessel was not a cruiser. It was not a diplomatic transport. It was not anything Station Meridian had a comfortable category for. Hull length, 4.8 kilometers. Beam, 1.1 kilometers. One ship. And it was broadcasting openly on standard diplomatic frequencies. The chief engineer stared at the data for a long moment, then sent it to the Council chamber without comment. That was how the accusation against Earth began to change shape before a single human had entered the room. 11 days earlier, the complaint had been sitting on the Council's table because no one could agree on the wording. Not the verdict. Not the punishment. The wording. That was the thing about the Galactic Council. 11 species sat beneath the same vaulted ceiling, each convinced that civilization survived because their own species had once invented caution. 11 opinions. 11 legal traditions. 11 different ways to say a thing without ever quite saying it. And by charter law, every formal accusation had to be approved by at least 8 delegates before it could be delivered. So the complaint against Earth remained on the central table, glowing softly in sealed blue text, while the Council argued over whether the human colony ships had committed a violation, an incursion, an overreach, a territorial breach, or an unauthorized presence with expansionist implications. High Counselor Robin had listened to all of it until the warmth in his cup went cold. He was old enough to remember when Council language had prevented wars. He was also old enough to recognize when language had become a hiding place for cowardice. For 11 days, no one wanted to admit the simple truth aloud. Humans had moved into the outer expansion belt. 14 coordinates. 14 colonies or pre-colony survey sites. 14 marks on a map that every Council species had quietly considered useful, valuable, or strategically necessary, but none had bothered to claim openly because the belt had been treated as protected space under the Common Space Accords of 2271. The problem was not only that humans had gone there. The problem was that they had gone there quickly. Over the past 2 years, human ships had appeared in regions where Council cartographers had expected empty space to remain empty for another generation. Survey vessels first. Then construction barges. Then slow, ugly colonization haulers carrying sealed habitats, industrial frames, agricultural modules, and the quiet certainty of a species that seemed to believe distance was an inconvenience rather than a boundary. Representative Haight of the mercantile worlds called it aggressive expansion. Representative Saul of the Veth Collective called it procedural uncertainty. Counselor Ova from the Deepwater worlds had said nothing for 3 meetings, which somehow made everyone more nervous than if she had shouted. Robin had finally placed his 4-fingered hand on the table hard enough to make the nearest translation's stones tremble. Violation and incursion both mean they crossed where we say they should not have crossed, he said. Choose one. Send the message. No one liked being hurried. But no one offered another word. So they chose incursion. The formal summons left Station Meridian at 400 station time. It traveled through relay gates, diplomatic buffers, encryption locks, and 3 layers of Council authentication before reaching Earth's diplomatic office. It listed all 14 coordinates in the outer expansion belt. It cited the Common Space Accords of 2271. It requested that a human representative appear before the full council within 30 standard days to answer for what the final draft called unauthorized territorial expansion in a protected zone. The phrase had sounded strong when Robin approved it. Then the reply came back in 6 hours. That alone changed the air inside the council office. Most species took at least a week to respond to a formal summons, partly because bureaucracy was slow and partly because delay was a diplomatic language of its own. The Danhari once took 4 months to acknowledge a border complaint, then claimed the delay proved they had considered it deeply. Earth did not delay. Earth did not object to the tone. Earth did not request clarification. The response arrived in clean formal language, exact time marks, correct title usage, and no visible irritation. Robin read it once. Then he read it again. Earth acknowledges the summons. Ambassador Darra Vas will represent the United Human Commonwealth at the requested session. A diplomatic vessel will arrive at Station Meridian no later than the 28th day. Please confirm docking coordinates. There were no legal objections. No warning. No rhetoric. No wounded pride. Just acceptance. Robin set the message down and stared at the council seal above his desk. In 40 years of council work, he had learned to distrust agreeable answers. Species that answered quickly and politely were either very confident or very dangerous. Sometimes they were both, and the difference only became clear after someone misread the silence between their words. He confirmed docking coordinates for berth 7. Then he ordered the legal scholars to begin preparing everything. For the next 3 weeks, Station Meridian behaved like an institution that believed preparation could substitute for understanding. Legal clerks pulled every clause of the Outer Belt Accords. Cartographers redrew maps until the expansion boundary glowed in precise red arcs. Translators prepared the treaty text in 17 languages, including 3 human ones, because no one wanted Earth to claim a translation failure later. Archive officers assembled settlement histories, old survey logs, and intent-to-claim records that had never seemed urgent until humans arrived in places where council intent had remained invisible. Robin watched the preparation with a pressure behind his eyes. The case looked strong on paper. That bothered him. Strong paper cases had a way of weakening when they touched reality. Now reality was 4.8 kilometers long. The council was in recess when Robin received the data. He was in the side room drinking something warm that no longer tasted like anything useful when his aide Sierra entered and placed a data pad in front of him. He read the first line. His eyes stopped moving. He read the rest. Then he looked up. Is this a ship? Sierra kept her voice careful. It appears to be one. One ship. Yes, High Counselor. Robin carried the data pad back into the council chamber and placed it on the central table. The other 10 counselors read the information one by one. No one spoke quickly after that. Representative Haight looked toward the wide observation window as if the thing might already be visible in the stars. Saul pulled up the approaching vessel's registry signal. It was broadcasting openly on standard diplomatic frequencies, clean and deliberate, as if it had nothing to hide and no reason to lower its voice. The signal identified the incoming vessel as UHC's Enduring Resolve. Registration number EF001 Titan. United Human Commonwealth Naval Command. Under vessel classification, the translation system produced 4 words. Titan-class strategic platform. Nobody in the room knew what that meant. And the ship was still coming. The Enduring Resolve did not enter the system like a warship preparing to make a point. That was what unsettled Pell most. A threatening vessel would have burned hot, crowded channels, pushed traffic aside, or thrown its weight into every sensor screen until no one could pretend not to see it. The human ship did none of that. It crossed the outer marker at a speed that made the station's tracking software hesitate for half a second, then decelerated with a precision so clean Pell checked the timestamp to make sure the data had not skipped. It came to rest 200 kilometers from Station Meridian. Exactly 200. Not 198. Not 206. 200, as if whoever had placed it there understood the difference between presence and pressure down to the last meter. Its navigation lights shifted into standard diplomatic pattern. Slow green pulses. 1 every 4 seconds. The same pattern used by harmless courier vessels, cultural exchange transports, and elderly treaty delegates who traveled with more luggage than urgency. On a ship 4.8 kilometers long, the effect was almost obscene. From the observation deck on level 9, civilian staff began gathering without orders. Maintenance workers leaned against the window frames. Docking clerks stopped pretending they were passing through. A pair of junior translators stood so close to the glass that their breath fogged the lower edge. At that distance, the ship did not look like a vessel. It looked like a strip of night someone had cut out of space and filled with lights. Rows of illumination ran along its spine in measured lines, too organized to be decorative, too steady to be accidental. The bow was broad and dark. The midsection carried armored ridges that looked less designed than grown through decades of repairs, upgrades, and decisions made by people who expected the universe to try very hard to kill them. One technician whispered that it looked like a city someone had launched into space. No one laughed. In the council side office, Robin did not sleep. He sat at his desk beneath the pale wall lamps and pulled everything the archives held on human naval development. Most of it was old. Worse than old, it was dismissive. Economic summaries. Cultural notes. A few cautious references to rapid industrial expansion. A low-priority military brief from 12 years ago that described the United Human Commonwealth as ambitious, technically adaptive, and regionally limited. Regionally limited. Robin stared at those two words until they stopped looking like analysis and started looking like an excuse. The newest document was a human defense white paper published 6 years earlier. It had been publicly available. The Council Intelligence Office had filed it under low priority because species that openly published military capabilities were usually exaggerating, naive, or trying to sell outdated hardware to nervous neighbors. Robin opened it. The Titan-class program had begun 34 years earlier, after the loss of an unmanned deep space probe near the outer arm. Not to pirates. Not to war. To a gravitational anomaly that had crushed the probe before it could send more than 2 seconds of emergency data. Humanity had looked at that loss and asked a question the Council reports quoted without understanding. If we intend to send people farther, what must we build so they come home? The answer had become 9 ships. 9 Titan-class strategic platforms in active service. Robin lowered the data pad. Outside his window, the enduring resolve pulsed green in the dark. At 700 station time, the human vessel opened a formal communications channel. The message was short, courteous, and exact. UHCS Enduring Resolve requests permission to launch 1 diplomatic shuttle to Station Meridian, Berth 7. Shuttle designation Resolve 1. Passenger Ambassador Darra Vas, United Human Commonwealth, Class 1 diplomatic status. Estimated transit time 40 minutes. Please confirm clearance. Robin confirmed clearance. Then he quietly asked traffic control to clear the surrounding approach corridor just in case. The shuttle emerged from the port side of the Resolve precisely 40 minutes later. Pell tracked it out of professional habit and felt his throat tighten. The shuttle alone was roughly the size of a mid-class patrol vessel. It moved through the corridor with smooth, unhurried control, broadcasting diplomatic codes on every standard channel, and docked at Berth 7 without incident. Pell noted the docking in his log. Then he added one private observation he knew he would delete later. Their shuttle is bigger than some fleet's command ships. Ambassador Darra Vas entered Station Meridian 11 minutes after landing. She was smaller than most of the council members. Brown skin, dark eyes, gray-streaked hair pulled back from her face. She wore diplomatic gray, not military black, not ceremonial armor, not the dramatic clothing aggressive species often chose when they wanted to look ancient and inevitable. A simple suit. A Commonwealth seal on the left shoulder. 1 document case in her hand. Nothing else. Her aide, a young man named Finn, followed with a second case and looked around the station with open curiosity, as if the vaulted corridors and mineral glass arches were interesting rather than intimidating. Saul met them at the corridor junction. Ambassador Vas, he said, keeping his tone formal. Welcome to Station Meridian. We trust your journey was comfortable. Very comfortable, thank you, Darra said. The Resolve has excellent transit bays. She said it as if she were complimenting the seating on a passenger liner. Sol made the polite sound his species used when silence would be too honest. The full council will convene at 1400, he said. Good. Darra paused, glancing toward the wide corridor window where the distant shape of the Resolve could just barely be seen. I noticed your traffic corridor was cleared this morning. I hope that was not necessary on our account. The Resolve should not have caused disruption at this distance. A precaution only, Sol told her. Of course, Darra said. Her tone contained no mockery. That made the answer worse. As Sol escorted her toward the guest quarters, his calm buzzed. He stepped aside. Pell's voice came through carefully flat. Representative Sol, I have completed the full sensor sweep per standard protocol. The human vessel is broadcasting an open weapons manifest on its secondary diplomatic channel. Sol looked down the corridor at Darra's retreating back. An open manifest? Yes, Representative. Full armament specifications. It appears to be standard Commonwealth transparency practice when operating in multi-species space. Sol's antennae rose slightly. Send it to the council chamber. Pell sent it. Sol read the first page while walking back. The manifest was 41 lines long. By the time Robin finished reading it, the session had not yet begun, and the accusation against Earth already felt smaller than it had yesterday. At 1400, the full council convened beneath the high glass ceiling of the Meridian chamber. 11 seats curved around the central table. 11 species faced the empty representative chair at the far end. 11 governments had come prepared to question Earth about 14 coordinates, and yet most of them kept glancing at the data pads in front of them, where the human vessel's weapons manifest waited like a sealed object no one wanted to touch. Robin had placed his own copy face down. He told himself it was for order. He knew it was because the first line had changed the way the room felt. Primary armament, 16 long-range mass accelerator batteries. He had stopped reading there the first time. Then he had forced himself through the rest. Variable yield deep penetration ordnance. Sustained multi-vector suppression arrays. Point defense grids layered in overlapping hemispheres. Terms that translated correctly and still refused to become comfortable. The chamber doors opened. Ambassador Darra Vas entered alone. No guards. No escort. No aide carrying military seals. She carried only her document case and walked with the same unhurried pace she had used in the corridor, as if there were not a city-sized warship sitting 200 kilometers away under standard diplomatic lights. She reached the representative chair, set her case down, sat, and waited. Robin opened the session with the formal greeting. His voice sounded steady enough. He recited the purpose of the hearing. He named the 14 coordinates in the outer expansion belt. He cited the Common Space Accords of 2271. He used the word incursion because the scholars had insisted it was the precise one. Darra listened without interrupting. She did not lean forward in protest. She did not stiffen at the accusation. She did not perform innocence. That stillness made Robin feel, with growing discomfort, that the council had prepared to strike a wall and had instead placed its hands against a door. When he finished, he looked across the table. Ambassador Vas, does the United Human Commonwealth have a response? Darra placed both hands lightly together on the table. I have a few questions if that is acceptable. Robin felt several counselors shift beside him. Of course, he said. The Common Space Accords of 2271, Darra said. Which version is the council citing? The original document, the 2281 revision, or the 2299 amendment? Robin turned slightly toward the legal scholar seated behind him. The scholar's throat membrane tightened. The original, the scholar said. I see, Darra replied. And does the council have a record of which species were present at the original drafting session? The scholar brought up the list. 9 species. Humanity was not on it. The reason was simple enough to be embarrassing. Earth had not achieved faster-than-light travel in 2271. Humans had still been inside their own system, building outward with chemical scars, orbital elevators, and engines the older council species would have considered primitive if they had bothered to look. Darra did not smile. We were not a spacefaring species at the time, she said. We were not present at that table. We were not notified of the accords before this summons. So before we discuss violation, I believe we must first establish whether Earth can be in breach of a treaty it never joined. The room went quiet. Not silent. Quiet. The kind of quiet where every species in the room continued breathing in its own way, but no one wanted to be the first to make a sound large enough to be noticed. Hate's red shell plates shifted against the back of his chair. There are provisions, he said, for new spacefaring species to be inducted into existing accords. There are, Darra agreed. We would be glad to discuss them. That answer should have helped. It did not. Earth was not contacted about those provisions, she continued. Our survey data showed no settlement, no active claim markers, and no boundary beacons in the contested regions. We understood the outer expansion belt to be unclaimed space. She opened her case and placed a slim data pad on the table. I brought our survey records for council review. No one reached for it immediately. Robin looked at the pad. Then at Darra. Then at the sealed complaint glowing blue at the center of the table. For 11 days, they had argued over how to accuse Earth. No one had spent enough time asking whether Earth had ever been given the rulebook. Saul broke the silence. Ambassador Vas, he said carefully, why did Earth send a warship? There was. The question everyone had carried into the room, but no one had wanted to place beside the legal argument. Darra turned toward him. The enduring resolve is my assigned diplomatic escort, she said. Under Commonwealth Code of Delegation, Class 1 ambassadors travel with full naval escort. It is standard protocol. A vessel of that size is standard protocol? It is the assigned vessel, yes. Saul did not blink. His species did not blink, but something in his posture tightened. Darra noticed. I want to be very clear, she said. The Resolve's presence is not intended as pressure or demonstration. She is here because I am here, and I am here because the Council asked me to come. If the size of my escort is causing discomfort, I can note that in my report and suggest a different protocol for future visits. The apology sounded genuine. That somehow made it worse. Robin turned over the weapons manifest. He had promised himself he would be direct. We received your vessel's weapons broadcast this morning, he said. Your officer described it as a transparency measure. Correct. I would like to ask about it. Of course. Robin looked down at the first line, then the second, then one phrase his translation system had marked as technically accurate. What does planetary surface saturation mean? The chamber seemed to contract around the question. Darra was quiet for a moment. It means the battery is rated to cover a large surface area with sustained fire, she said. It is an old design feature. Most of those batteries have never been fired in combat. Most, Hate said. Darra looked at him. Yes. No one moved. The Resolve is 31 years old, Darra continued. She was built for the worst scenario we could imagine at the time. That scenario has not occurred. But you built for it anyway, Hate said. Yes. Why? Darra considered the question as if it deserved more than a slogan. Because where we come from, she said, it is better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. That is a very old human idea. It applies to medicine, infrastructure, emergency systems. She paused. And ships. Robin set the manifest down. In 40 years of politics, he had met aggressive species, proud species, territorial species, and species that used silence as a blade. He had never sat across from a diplomat who asked clean legal questions, apologized for the size of a warship, and explained planetary weapons the way someone might explain why a settlement kept fire shelters. The accusation against Earth had not collapsed. Not yet. But Robin could feel its shape bending. We will take a short recess, he said. No one objected. The recess was supposed to last 15 minutes. It lasted 47. No one formally extended it. No one announced a delay. The council simply scattered into side rooms, private offices, and quiet corners where they could pretend they were reviewing procedure instead of reassessing the species sitting across from them. Robin stood in the side office with both hands on the edge of the desk. Sierra waited near the door. She was 26 years old and had worked as his research aide for 3 years. In that time, she had written briefs on 49 species, drafted 11 treaty summaries, and once spent 4 days translating a Danhari land use dispute that turned out to be about a parking bay. Robin had never asked her for anything in the voice he used now. "Pull everything," he said. "On the ambassador? On the ship?" Sierra's eyes moved once toward the window. The enduring resolve. Public record. Intelligence summary. Anything the Council database has on human naval construction. Focus on the Titan-class program. Robin looked back at the chamber doors. "I want to know what we are sitting across the table from." Sierra left at once. The first layer was the Council Intelligence Archive. It was thinner than it should have been. Most of the human file was economic output, population movement, cultural behavior, and warnings about accelerated industrial growth. There were notes on Earth's expansion rate. There were summaries about human manufacturing clusters. There were caution flags about how quickly humans converted surveyed rock into livable infrastructure. There was almost nothing useful on the Titan class. That absence had a taste to it. Not secrecy. Neglect. The second layer was Earth's public broadcast archive. Human governments had been transmitting open interstellar information for decades, and the Council had been receiving it with the patient disinterest older powers often reserved for younger ones. Sierra searched naval construction, then strategic platform, then Titan class. The third layer appeared almost casually in the results. Commonwealth published defense documentation. Available to registered diplomatic offices. Request required. Sierra stared at the access prompt. Then she requested it. The file arrived in 11 minutes. No negotiation. No clearance delay. No warning that the content was restricted. Just the document, delivered as if the Commonwealth had expected someone to ask eventually and had prepared the answer long ago. Sierra opened it. The first page contained a history summary. The Titan-class program had begun 34 years earlier after the Outer Arms survey loss. An unmanned human probe had been destroyed by a gravitational event near the galactic outer arm. Not an enemy. Not a rival. Not a border conflict. Space itself had broken something humanity had sent ahead. The Commonwealth Strategic Planning Division had studied the final data and asked a question that appeared in the report without decoration. If we plan to send people beyond rescue range, what must they carry with them? Sierra read that sentence twice. The answer had taken 8 years to build. The Enduring Resolve was the third Titan-class vessel completed. She had been in continuous deep space service for 31 years. In that time, she had returned to dry dock twice. Once for a scheduled systems overhaul after her 15th year. Once to upgrade her primary drive array. Everything else she handled herself. Fuel processing, munitions storage, food production, minor repairs, component replacement, emergency medical response, hull reinforcement. The Resolve carried 3 internal fabrication bays capable of manufacturing most of her own replacement parts from raw material. She carried equipment to refine viable fuel from 3 different asteroid compositions. She carried medical facilities large enough to run a small hospital. Crew complement, 11,214. Sierra stopped reading. She leaned closer. 11,000 people. Not passengers. Crew. Living and working inside one ship, deployed beyond ordinary support, carrying factories, hospitals, weapons, food systems, repair yards, and enough patience to make distance meaningless. She kept reading. The Enduring Resolve was not the largest Titan-class vessel in service. That distinction belonged to the UHCS Absolute Threshold, completed 9 years ago. 6.2 kilometers long. Crew complement just over 15,000. The report described it in one dry paragraph and moved on. Sierra felt a strange irritation rise in her chest, not at the humans, but at the way the document treated impossible things as administrative details. There were 9 Titan-class vessels total. 3 on deep exploration deployment in the Outer Arm. 2 assigned to border patrol routes. 1 in scheduled maintenance. 1 attached to humanitarian contingency readiness. 1 under long-range systems trial. And the Enduring Resolve listed as diplomatic escort duty. Diplomatic escort duty. A city with engines and planetary weapons assigned to carry ambassadors. Sierra highlighted the key figures because she thought it might help. When she returned to the side office, Robin was standing exactly where she had left him. She placed the data pad on the desk. He read the highlighted sections. Crew complement. Fabrication capacity. Deployment duration. Fleet count. Then he looked up. How many ships total? Sierra knew what he meant. Not Titan class. All human naval vessels. She opened the summary table and turned the pad toward him. Robin looked at the number. For several seconds, he said nothing. They published this, he said. It was not a question. Yes, Sierra replied. It is freely available. They have been broadcasting it for years. Yes. Why would anyone publish their fleet numbers? Sierra had thought about that during the 11 minutes the file took to arrive. I do not think it is a provocation, she said carefully. I think it is an answer. Robin looked at her. To what question? The one every government asks when a new species expands quickly. Sierra paused. What do they have? Robin looked back down at the document. They are telling us. Yes. Not hiding it. No. Sierra searched for the right word and disliked the one she found because it felt too simple. They do not appear to think they need to hide it. Robin let out a slow breath. The council had spent 11 days choosing the correct accusation. Earth had spent 6 hours accepting the summons, 26 days arriving, and decades making sure the answer to every unasked question was already public. He straightened his robe. Then he picked up the data pad. This time, when he returned to the chamber, he did not place the human fleet summary face down. Ambassador Darra Vas was already seated, waiting, patient, polite, the same expression she had worn all afternoon. The other counselors returned one by one. Several saw Robin's face and immediately reached for their own data pads. Haight read something that made the plates along his jaw settle lower. Saul's antennae barely moved, which Robin had learned meant he was thinking quickly. Robin opened the session again. He did not begin with the treaty. Ambassador Vas, he said, I would like to ask something not on the formal agenda, if you will permit it. Darra nodded once. Of course. Your survey ships found the outer expansion belt. No settlement. No active claim markers. No boundary beacons. You moved in. Robin leaned forward slightly. Did it not occur to anyone on Earth that absence of settlement does not mean absence of intent? The question was not accusation anymore. It was the first honest thing he had asked all day. Darra thought about it before answering. Not performing thought. Actually doing it. Yes, she said. That conversation happened. Some in our government raised exactly that concern. Robin waited. But the counterargument was also raised, she continued. Empty space with no markers and no communication leaves a species with a choice. Wait indefinitely for permission that may never come, or move and be willing to negotiate when someone objects. She looked around the chamber. You objected. We came. No one answered. Because that, Robin realized, was also true. Here we are, Robin thought. Not as a statement. As a correction. The council had built the hearing around the assumption that Earth had been dragged to the table. The summons, the formal accusation, the treaty citation, the chamber arrangement, all of it had been shaped to place humans in the position of the accused. But Darra Vas had not entered like someone cornered. She had entered like someone answering a door. Robin glanced at the sealed complaint still glowing at the center of the table. Its blue light looked colder now. Smaller. A document written by 11 governments that had mistaken procedure for leverage. The formal accusations on the agenda, Robin said slowly, are less productive than they were this morning. Haight turned toward him. Several counselors did the same. Robin continued before anyone could interrupt. The legal question of treaty applicability is real. It will need to be resolved. But it will not be resolved today by pretending Earth signed an agreement it never saw. Darra did not react. That steadiness allowed him to keep going. What I would like to propose with the Council's agreement is that we set aside the accusation framework and discuss what a workable arrangement looks like going forward. For the first time all session, the chamber did not feel like a court. It felt like a room full of governments trying to measure the edge of a thing they should have measured years ago. Haight spoke before Robin had fully settled back into his chair. I want to hear the Commonwealth's proposal first. Darra accepted this without hesitation. She opened her document case and removed a single-page summary, already prepared, already translated, already formatted in Council standard structure. Robin noticed that. So did Saul. Earth had not come only to defend itself. Earth had come with terms. The Commonwealth proposes a joint boundary commission, Darra said. One representative from each participating species. Co-chaired by a human delegate and a council-appointed delegate. The commission would spend 12 months surveying the outer belt, documenting all existing interests, settlement plans, ecological limits, resource claims, and intent claims. She placed the summary on the table. At the end of that period, the commission would draft an expansion framework all parties can sign. She paused long enough for the next words to land cleanly. Not one drafted without us. One drafted with us. No one reached for the page immediately. Robin was beginning to understand that hesitation had become the Council's first language today. Darra continued. We are not asking for everything in the belt. We are asking for fair terms that account for the fact that Earth arrived late to a galaxy that was already being divided quietly without our knowledge. We are willing to acknowledge claims we did not know existed, provided those claims are documented and transparent. Her eyes moved across the table, not challenging anyone, simply including everyone. We are willing to accept limits on our expansion rate, provided those limits apply equally to all species and are not designed simply to keep us contained. That last word did something to the room. Contained. Not managed. Not integrated. Contained. The word named the fear beneath the procedure, and once named, it could no longer hide inside legal language. Haight's jaw plates clicked once. And if certain zones are declared off-limits? On what basis? Darra asked. Council authority. We are not council members. The answer came quickly. Too quickly for anyone to soften it. Darra did not raise her voice. She did not lean forward. She did not make the sentence sharp. That made it sharper. You cannot legislate our behavior through an institution we do not belong to. You can ask. You can negotiate. You can present evidence that a zone should remain untouched, and we may agree. But not because 11 governments made a decision in a room where Earth had no seat. Haight stared at her. For a moment, Robin thought he might let the point stand. He did not. And if we sent ships to enforce it? The chamber went still. Not quiet this time. Still. The translators stopped flickering. Saul's antennae froze in place. One of the junior legal clerks near the rear wall lowered his eyes to the floor as if looking directly at the table had become unsafe. Darra looked at Haight. Her expression did not turn hostile. It did not turn cold. It became something worse than either because it remained honest. Then Earth would regret the loss of what could have been a straightforward working relationship, she said. And we would continue building. No one spoke. Haight's gaze shifted, despite himself, to Robin's datapad. The fleet figures were still visible. 9 Titan-class platforms. The Enduring Resolve parked outside as diplomatic escort. Human naval numbers listed plainly in an open document. Construction capacity rising year over year. Darra had not pointed to any of it. She did not need to. Building what? Faith. The question came out lower than he intended. Darra held his gaze for one breath. Then she said nothing. It was the first answer she had refused to give all day. And somehow it answered more than the rest. Haight looked away first. Robin saw it. So did everyone else. Counselor Ova, the 6-limbed delegate from the deep-water worlds, finally moved. She had remained silent through accusation, defense, weapons manifest, treaty challenge, and fleet revelation. When she spoke, her voice came through the translator soft and flat, like pressure changing at the bottom of an ocean. I support the Joint Commission. 3 more counselors said the same thing in quick succession. Saul added his support next. Then the others, one by one, until the shape of the vote was already obvious before Robin called it. He called it anyway. Form mattered, even when power had moved somewhere else. The proposal for a joint boundary commission is submitted for formal vote, Robin said. All in favor. 11 authorization lights appeared around the table. No abstentions. No objections. 11-0. The sealed accusation at the center of the table dimmed automatically, its procedural status replaced by commission pending. Darra made a brief note in her document case. Not triumphant. Not relieved. Just precise. Thank you, she said. We will have our nominee for co-chair delivered to your office within 10 days. The session closed at 1847 station time. Haight left the chamber without speaking to anyone. Robin watched him go and did not blame him. There was a particular discomfort in realizing, mid-argument, that the position of strength you thought you held had only existed because the other side had not yet entered the room properly. It did not leave quickly. Robin remained seated after the others filed out. He looked at the empty chair where Darra Vas had sat all afternoon. She had been polite. Genuinely polite. She had answered every question except the one that did not need answering. She had offered a fair proposal. She had never raised her voice. She had never made a threat. What she had done, with quiet precision, was make every path except the reasonable one lead somewhere no sensible government wanted to go. Robin was not sure whether to admire that, or fear how cleanly it had been done. The station felt different the next morning, though nothing had changed. The lights were the same. The corridors were the same. The recycled air carried the same faint mineral taste that every old station developed after enough years of filtration, sealed pressure, and lives spent indoors beneath artificial dawns. But the people moved differently. A little slower near windows. A little quieter near sensor displays. A little more aware of the dark beyond the glass where, 200 kilometers away, the enduring resolve sat under diplomatic lights and waited. It had not threatened anyone. It had not locked weapons. It had not flooded the station with military signal traffic. It had simply remained there, patient and visible, while every person aboard Station Meridian adjusted their understanding of what patience could weigh. Pell kept the sensor screen live through the night. He told himself it was standard monitoring protocol. He logged passive scans every 30 minutes with careful precision. Engine output stable. Mass displacement stable. Communications clean. Navigation lights maintained in diplomatic pattern. At some point after midnight, he opened the Commonwealth transparency feed again. Real-time internal ship data scrolled across his secondary screen. Drive temperature. Crew activity metrics. Life support balance. Medical readiness. Fabrication bay status. Residential deck environmental load. Pell stopped on that line. Residential decks. 11 of them. He tried to imagine 11,000 people living inside that ship. Not soldiers standing in rows waiting for orders, but engineers sleeping after maintenance shifts, cooks preparing meals, medics checking equipment, children perhaps writing to parents back on Earth, officers walking corridors longer than some city districts. The thought did not make the ship smaller. It made it worse. A weapon could be dismissed as a machine. A city could not. At 900 station time, Ambassador Darra Vas returned to the docking corridor with Finn beside her. He carried the document cases. She carried herself with the same even calm she had brought into the chamber, as if yesterday had been a difficult but successful administrative meeting. Saul waited at the junction to see her off. He had prepared a formal farewell the night before. It had been balanced, courteous, professionally distant, and completely useless. When Darra stopped before him, Saul did not use it. "Ambassador," he said, "may I ask something personal?" Darra nodded. "Of course. Were you aware of the effect the resolve would have on this station?" Darra was quiet for a moment. Not evasive. Measuring the truth before placing it down. "I had a reasonable expectation," she said. "And you brought her anyway." "She was already coming," Darra replied. "Protocol assigns the escort, not the ambassador." Saul's antennae moved slightly. "But you could have requested a smaller vessel." "Yes. You chose not to." Darra looked past him for a moment toward the far window, where the resolve was only a dark shape against the stars. Then she looked back. "Because I was walking into a room where 11 governments intended to hold Earth responsible for a treaty we never signed," she said. I wanted everyone in that room to make their decisions with accurate information. She picked up her document case. Not as emphasis. Not as threat. As conclusion. Context matters. Saul did not answer quickly. For the first time since meeting her, he understood that the most dangerous thing about Darra Vas was not that she could threaten without speaking. It was that she could tell the truth in a way that left no shelter behind it. Darra and Finn boarded the shuttle. The docking clamps released at 9:34. The shuttle crossed back toward the Enduring Resolve with the same clean, unhurried precision it had shown on arrival. Pell tracked it automatically. He watched the small craft disappear into a portside bay large enough to swallow half the station's patrol fleet, then logged the docking without adding commentary. At 1100, the Resolve opened a brief channel. Station Meridian, this is UHCS Enduring Resolve. We are preparing to depart. Thank you for your hospitality. Enduring Resolve out. That was all. No closing warning. No ceremonial message. No reminder of the vote. No statement of strength. On Level 9, nearly 30 people had gathered by the observation windows before anyone admitted they were there to watch. Sensor staff. Docking clerks. Maintenance contractors. 2 translators. Robin near the back with his hands folded. Saul beside him, silent. The Resolve's drives began to power up. For 4 minutes, nothing moved. Then the light appeared. Deep blue-white, low at first, then steady enough to stain the glass. The station's outer sensors registered a minor gravity gradient as the ship shifted its mass field for departure. The floor did not tremble, but several people looked down anyway. The ship moved. Not quickly. Not at first. It slipped away from the station like a tide withdrawing from a shore, slow and enormous, without hurry, without apology, without asking the universe to make room. The observation deck stayed silent. The Resolve crossed the inner system marker in 6 minutes. Its acceleration curve rose with clean, deliberate force. At the outer boundary, the drive bloom sharpened into a point of light. Then it jumped. The light vanished. The sensor screen showed empty space. For several seconds, no one moved. Someone near the front let out a breath so slowly it was almost not a sound. Robin remained by the window after the others began to drift away. He stared at the place where the ship had been. Ordinary stars filled the space again, but they did not feel ordinary yet. Saul came to stand beside him. She said it was context, Saul said. Yes. Not a threat. Robin watched the empty dark. Do you believe her? Robin thought about the hearing. The polite questions. The open weapons manifest. The proposal prepared before the accusation had even landed. The answer to Hate's enforcement question that had ended the argument without ever becoming an argument. I believe she meant exactly what she said, Robin replied. That is the part we should be most thoughtful about. Saul considered this. Because the context itself was the message. Robin nodded once. Because the context itself was the message. They stood there a moment longer. Then Robin turned away from the window and walked back toward the council offices, where a joint commission waited to be organized and a treaty system older than humanity now had to make room for it. In the sensor bay, Pell opened the departure log. His fingers hovered above the remarks field. Then he typed one final note. Vessel behaved with complete professionalism throughout. Recommend updating classification standards. Current framework has no adequate category for what this was. He saved the log. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at the empty screen for a long time.